Nick, what are you seeing in the senior HR market?
I think we're seeing growing levels of activity and curiosity in the market. I think the year started off with lots of possible conversations. I think organisations recognising the need for change, and a lot of senior leaders probably feeling that they're due a change as well. So I think the growing sentiment is kind of movement. At the CPO level, I think organisations are absolutely in a different position to where they were 12 months ago. There's growing confidence in market stabilising. And I think organisations have a real appetite to kind of push their agenda forward from a people perspective. I think we're seeing significant increase in CHRO and CPO mandates. It's fair to say they're quite slow moving, and I'd say we love an NDA at the moment. I think there's a lot of early buildings of conversations and probably a lot of curiosity from kind of C-suite in what's out there in the market, and a general kind of interest on, are people moving? What are their interests? What would captivate someone to move jobs at the moment? So that a lot of questions and curiosity in the market, I would say. I think we're seeing more and more movement of people coming from larger organisations being interested in going to something more agile. I think that's definitely a recurring theme of people reflecting on where they are in their careers and maybe not necessarily wanting to sit tight in a big multinational and wait for the CHRO gig, and maybe going to something that's more nimble and taking that first CPO role in a different environment. So that feels certainly kind of prevalent so far this year. I mean, what are you seeing, James, at that kind of board -1, so HRLT level at the moment?
Good question. I think there's a definite sense of acceleration and greater focus from businesses looking for senior HR professionals who are rising through their career and who are really accelerating their capability and digital fluency. So, the kind of mandates and the instructions we've been seeing from organisations have been around, we're looking for an individual who's got great expertise around change transformation, seeing the implementation of a global HR technology, HRIS platform. The conversations we're having with those clients at the moment are around capability around AI. Have they got knowledge, expertise, practical experience of leveraging different tools, AI tools, to really maximise and drive as much efficiency around their people, around their engagement, around their workforce, management, talent, all those things. That's a trend. We would have seen interest, and of course we'd have seen demand for people with that technology transformation background a couple of years ago. There's such a great acceleration around this need for expertise around different AI tools that can really drive tangible value from the more basic platform. Looking to the future, I think that's something that absolutely, in 3 to 5 years' time, the makeup of those people who are perhaps not quite at CPO or CHRO level, but who are on that ascent, in 3 to 5 years' time, those people, or the people who will be sitting at that level, I think there'll be a huge, much bigger bench strength of capability and knowledge in that space that's just naturally evolving. But it's absolutely, that's a driver. If you look at what are we being asked for from our clients, what is driving their interest, to your point, their interest and their inquisitiveness, is around people who've got that digital fluency that's going to hugely benefit them.
We're asked a lot from kind of candidates who are trying to map out their careers and kind of identify areas in HR function where they can gain some of that. For me, one of the hot areas is HR operations at the moment, and it's probably one of the areas that has the most possibilities around technology transformation, around AI, and an opportunity for senior HR leaders to really get their teeth into, technology, automation on a level that maybe a business partner role wouldn't. So I know you and I have partnered on a couple of operations searches recently. What do you think that landscape looks like from an HR operations perspective?
I think it depends on the business. Some businesses will have made the jump. They've created those shared services. They've been in existence for a number of years now. For those more mature models, they may well be shifting them to a different, perhaps nearshore location, but with a very big focus on low cost location. That's absolutely, I think, for businesses that do already have the ops piece, they're reviewing where they've got those operations and saying, how do we drive more efficiency? How do we drive those at perhaps a lower cost? For those perhaps who haven't got to that point and who may be right at the beginning of the journey, there's maybe a benefit to them that they can perhaps leapfrog, one with newer technologies that have come in, and maybe looking at new spaces where other businesses have gone into, probably tried that new market out for them, realised there is a good talent pool, and they can perhaps come in off the back of that and benefit. HR operations has been a core area for HR skill set and professionals for a number of years. Not always necessarily the most glamorous, or not always necessarily the most high profile, but as we evolve on this digital journey we're on at the moment, that getting HR operations right, as we can see from those conversations we're having with clients, is really, really critical.
It's the topic that we hear from most CPOs as the area that is the key area to get right at the moment. And it's also the kind of biggest holder of HR budgets. It's a huge amount. Normally HRIS sits under HR operations. So, if an organization's gone and invested in a Workday and they've deployed it, the HR operations function are kind of bringing that to life and making sure that they're kind of getting the gains of having a phenomenal piece of tech kind of in the stack. I think one of the things we also see from an HR leadership perspective is it's one of those areas where HR leaders actually get big team management responsibility now. As we're in a much more of a matrix model, it's not uncommon for senior HR leaders in business unit facing roles to not be managing big teams, where HR operations is an opportunity to go in and get a much larger workforce possibly. Question you're seeing for, offshoring versus almost skipping a step now and saying, rather than offshoring and going to a low cost location, let's just scrap it all and going to kind of bots and fully AI and self-service. How brave do you think organizations are being in that space?
There's a real sort of divergence there. You can see some businesses that perhaps are very much towards the higher end of the risk scale and are piling straight in, and that can give rewards. It can obviously, it comes with risks as well. And there are, I think, some situations, some organizations that have probably jumped too quickly and have thought they could jump from A to Z, and actually they've sort of come a cropper on the way and realised they've got to put much more, they couldn't go that far. So there is definitely, I think now's the time for businesses to look at how they drive efficiency more, and with a very strong focus on cost. That's a huge piece. Linking into this, there are conversations that I'm having with organisations now whereby those businesses are now looking at, well, could we perhaps pull some kind of strategic alignment between HR and technology as functions? I'm not saying this is going to be an absolute trend, but there are certainly conversations that I've had with businesses who are looking at potentially merging their HR and their technology functions together, which is something hitherto probably not seen that much of. As we move into a much more digital world, might that be the future of certain lens for HR? It's got to be much, much more closely aligned to technology functions than it perhaps has been to previously.
It's certainly a pain point in the market at the moment, isn't it? That probably, like most people, my social media is full of AI tools that are going to change my life. And I think in reality, most HR leaders are looking at these tools and they're fantastic, but ultimately until an HR system's being fully optimized and utilized, you're kind of building on top of kind of wobbly foundations. So I think there's still a massive cleanup in how HR systems are utilized, with capability in HR functions to do that, to allow some of these kind of amazing kind of bolt-on solutions to land. HR operations for us feels like it's at its most disruptive space. It's an area that we would certainly be encouraging senior HR leaders to get some kind of exposure and access to if they're kind of planning out and rooting their kind of future leadership kind of career. So James, you're just back from trip to New York and DC. What are the legal or US legal clients talking to you about at the moment? What are you hearing?
I think, look, there continues to be strong growth in that market. The US firms, their scale, their size is phenomenal, and therefore their ability to really command the market, and not just in the US, but certainly into the UK and Europe is continuing to grow. They all have appetite to continue their growth in terms of their revenues, in terms of their partnership. So investment is absolutely on the cards in terms of their fee-earning population. I think in the context of looking around their HR functions and how they support their businesses as they grow, I think there are certainly firms at the moment that have really grasped the nettle of how do we look after our people, how do we maintain them, how do we ensure they don't burn out, how do we really invest in their long-term career trajectories with us. They need to bring in top talent from, not just potentially law, but non-legal sectors who are bringing fresh ideas from industry, from financial services, that have knowledge and expertise around talent management strategies that are going to be disruptive. There is a massive need there for many, many firms to continue to evolve their own proposition, their capability from an HR perspective. I think it's a really exciting time in that, again, looking at businesses focusing businesses in places like DC and New York. Firms in those locations are extremely strong. They have great deal of opportunity in terms of not just their own domestic markets, but looking out to the rest of the world. And they're going to be aggressive on those. They're going to look out and see where they can take those opportunities. The vibe I will take from all those meetings has been generally around positivity, around the opportunity for growth, around how, in some firms, slower than others, but how really good quality, strong relationship-focused HR professionals, HR business partners, talent leaders can really make a difference and engage the population, the partnership population, on how it helps them drive their businesses forwards.
And I know a lot of the time when you're meeting certainly the US law firms in the States, they're asking you to help kind of navigate some of the intricacies of kind of global recruitment. Are there any key themes or any markets they're particularly kind of asking you about at the moment from a countries and a region perspective?
Probably translation is the phrase that I would use. So those individuals who can work with a US-led firm and who have knowledge of working for a US firm, but have knowledge of working across the UK, the Europe, often into Asia Pacific, that ability to, one might all be talking in English, but the variations around that and understanding the different cultural nuances across those different markets, that translation piece is really, really important to, I think, a number of those firms when they're looking at individuals who can navigate the different kind of cultural aspects of what you'll see in a US firm to a European to an Asia Pacific based business.